All right, guys, welcome back to another 117 Industries. As you guys can see from the title, today we're going to be reviewing the Fall of Reach novel. Now, this novel came out in 2001. It's by Eric Nyland. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. Now, if you put 1 plus 1, 2001 is when the first Halo game came out. 2001 is when this first novel came out. This kind of came out alongside the first Halo game. And so this was a lot of like the background information and just like a lot of character development and characters that we see in the first game. This and alongside as well as the Flood novel that pretty much is the novelization of the first Halo game. Um, Either or, we're going to be doing a just kind of a review. We're not going to do anything like tier list, but just kind of breaking it down a little bit. So if you don't want spoilers, you might not want to watch the rest of this video. And at the end of the video, we're just kind of giving like a final score, like a out of 10 or out of 100%, kind of thing. So without further ado, we'll kind of break it down a little bit, just talk about the novel. So first things first, they kind of have made a movie out of this. It's like a short film, and it's pretty much out of like the first half. The first half of this novel is pretty much setting up the Halo universe. It's setting up the whole Spartans and John and the Master Chief and all of that stuff with Dr. Halsey and Cortana. And it's just kind of setting up all of that in the universe within it. And there's no covenant or anything like that. It's just the UNSC, the Spartan program, Oni, Dr. Halsey, even introduces Jacob Keyes for a brief time. And it's just kind of introducing background information in the Halo universe, which, like I said, they've kind of made a movie out of pretty much. It's on Netflix, or was on Netflix for a while. I don't know if it still is. It's just called The Fall of Reach. It's an animation, and I actually watched that well before I read this book, but I just had seen it when I was a bit younger, and I like Halo, and I watched it, and it was okay. But it really was cool to kind of have that visualization already pictured in my head after I started reading it. So if you're ever thinking about reading this before or after, I would recommend watching that short film animation. Like I said, it's not the whole book in a movie. It's like about half of it, but it does a really good job of like just putting what we had on the book onto a screen in animation. And it's relatively low budget, so it's not like the most grandiose thing you've ever seen, but it's really fun. And then pretty much after that, like where the film stops and the book kind of goes into the second half is like the beginning of the Covenant and Human War. And that stuff you can kind of just get through playing the rest of the Halo stuff that is kind of built on later on. Like, the blue team and all of the characters like Fred, Linda, Kelly, some other characters like Joshua, Samuel, characters like that. Some space battles, which I think is a side note. I personally, I've read quite a few Star Wars novels. I'm getting up there into the hundreds at this point, I feel like. And it's very far and few between that I read a space battle in a novel or I hear an audiobook and it really keeps me intrigued. I kind of get bored sometimes, right? Because they're using a lot of phrases and the setting up of it just can sometimes be a little lackluster and it's hard to follow sometimes. I've got to say, I don't know if I've ever read a book or heard an audiobook. And I'll say the audiobook I listened to wasn't like high maintenance. Like it was relatively low quality. It wasn't bad or anything, but it was relatively low quality. There wasn't a lot of effort put into it. So I don't think it was the audiobook. I think it was more or less how it was written. And this was the most intrigued I've ever been in a space battle. And it was Jacob Keyes over, I believe it was Harvest, or potentially Reach. I can't remember where it was, but it was in a space battle, and it was really, really awesome to be involved in that. And I don't think I've ever been that involved in a story when it comes to like a space battle, especially that big themed, right, with giant naval ships and all of that. So that's a side note that I think Eric Nyland did a really good job of writing that in. And just the rest of the novel, I think, was really good in just trying to develop John, Master Chief 117's character, and Jacob Keyes. And it didn't really try to develop Cortana much, but it did a really good job introducing her and kind of where Catherine Halsey was coming from, because it did do a lot of Halsey development. And I think the best thing about this is reading these, especially because I've read quite a few Star Wars novels, is like knowing that this is established canon and lore. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. And it's been like that since 2001. is really awesome because it's really easy to get more involved that way. Sometimes when you read some of the older Legends Star Wars books, it's harder to really get involved, even though it's a great book. For instance, a lot of Timothy Zahn stuff. But because in the back of your head, it's not canon, it's not lore, the stuff you're reading doesn't really apply. It's just a story, right? Especially when you're reading something that, like in a Star Wars or Halo, this big IP, this big universe, you want your story you're reading to kind of be involved into the bigger picture in the games you play, in the movies you watch, and the shows you watch. And I think I really like that part of this novel, knowing that since 2001, this novel has been part of the Halo universe and it's not going anywhere. And I really like that a lot of these planets and these areas and settings and themes that they used in this book in 2001, they had so much more development on in years past and years later.
There are a couple aspects to storytelling. It's character development and the actual, like, how they can make you visualize the things on the page. And I think it did both of those things really well. There was no point in this book where I wanted to be like, that's just boring, I could honestly skip this part. Every part of it was extremely interesting. Seeing the background on Master Chief, seeing the background on Halsey and her ethical dilemma on starting the Spartan Project, seeing Cortana being introduced not as an AI, but as one of the best AIs, one of the smartest, because she's different than other AIs. Going into playing the Halo games now that we're live streaming, it's cool to have this amazing background to see why these characters are so smart and cool. Captain Keyes is very well respected because of what he did without an AI. Ship maneuvering and all this stuff is really hard to do, especially when you have such little time to think about these things. That's why you have a high processing power AI, and to do some crazy maneuver, some crazy things without an AI guiding you or doing some calculations or something gives you respect within the whole military. Master Chief it's always good to have lore on him. There was no point in this book where I didn't want more.
I gotta say, this book, when we started this channel, and I was trying to figure out what books I wanted to start at, because I knew I wanted to get some of the books just to have a bunch of background lore. And I looked it up to figure out like what people thought was the best spot to start. And overall, most people recommended The Fall of Reach as the first novel. Not only because it was one of the first books, if not the first book, I could be wrong on that, to come out for the Halo series and books, but also because it's a really, really good starting point. Even though now they've made books that technically predate The Fall of Reach, it's just a really good starting point. In most people's eyes, the story technically starts at Halo CE, even though there's prequel games like Halo Wars and Halo Reach. It starts in Halo CE in most people's hearts, and this is a really good book to really start out. If you are interested in reading any of the Halo novels, I would definitely recommend reading this one first. It got me super enthralled in the whole Halo universe, the UNSC rankings, the naval rankings, the ODST, the Covenant side stories that we got. I mean, it was really, really fun. And it's really cool to see that a lot of the stuff that we see in this book that are got put in some of the games later on, like the engineers. That wasn't someone we saw until Halo 3 ODST, which came out years later, almost a decade later. So that's really cool to see just how involved this book is in the novels. And so far, I've read a couple more already since then. I've read the Flood, First Strike, and those novels are pretty much on par with it. We'll do videos on those separately later, but it's a really good starting point from The Fall of Reach and just kind of going forward with those other books. So I can't give this enough praise. So with all those things being said, like I said, it's near perfect. Out of 100%, where would you put it? I'd probably go like between like 94, 93% out of 100%. Like that's how, on a perfect scale, that's where it'd be. It's a near perfect book for me. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think on the percent scale, I'd go like 95, 96%. There's just no page that I wouldn't want to reread again. Every single thing, front cover to cover, had me intrigued. And I mean, I'm a Gen Z. I have a low attention span. This was just captivating and amazing.
Yeah, definitely recommend reading it if you have not already. So with all that being said, we hope you guys did enjoy this video. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. There'll be a card on the top right. Go check out some of our other videos. Like I said, if you guys are interested in other book reviews, go check out other YouTube channel at Master Apprentice. We've got quite a few Star Wars book reviews on that channel. With that, we will see you guys in the next video.
Peace.